Hello and welcome back to What Is This Weapon? I'm Jonathan and this is kind of a space cowboy gun in my mind. So this is something that caught my eye on the racks, kindly donated by a member of the public some years ago. Thank you for that. You will know who you are if you see this. And I think some of you will recognize this. So this is one of the Mateba family of auto-revolvers. What's an auto-revolver, you might ask? Well, having just picked this up, let's right out of the gate, or nearly out of the gate, quickly, casually grab one of our many Webley Fosbury revolvers. So the idea of an automatic revolver, which sounds like a contradiction in terms, is that you, well, long story short, you get a nice, short, light, accurate trigger pull and rapidity of fire without having to have that long, slow pull on the trigger for a double action trigger pull, or having to manually cock it first. So your typical double action revolver allows you to either manually cock for each shot, one after another, quite slow to do, or you sort of spam the trigger with a fair bit of finger strength, depending on how well sort of gunsmithed the lock work is. Some of them are so good that, quite frankly, there's no need for technology like this. But George Fosbury came up with, and it's not the only system to do this, but you see, we'll come to this one day, I'm sure, but there's a zigzag notch in the cylinder, and the whole upper frame of the revolver cycles under recoil, obviously generated by the cartridge. So we'll get into this again at some point, I'm sure, but you can cock this almost like a semi-automatic pistol. You get a nice light trigger pull followed by 5 more nice light trigger pulls, whereas on a normal double action revolver, pre-cocking it would only get you 1 accurate shot, and then the rest would be that long, annoying, potentially, trigger pull. My favourite fact about these is in an article I wrote for Armax on aerial small arms that aren't fixed machine guns, if that makes sense. And one absolute maniac who had 6 of these things in a wooden rack and just kept pulling them out and firing them off until they were empty. Anyway, this isn't about the Fosbury, but one of the other, probably the only other auto revolver that people might have heard of is the Mateba, the Unica 6. Now that is typically, or more famously, a pistol, revolver pistol. I'm a stickler for that older terminology. Handgun if you prefer. So it looks like this, but without the buttstock and a much shorter barrel, being a pistol. It's sort of a celebrated pop culture gun, shows up in some games, some animes. It does look cool, has to be said. Now, as to how that technically works, similar to the Fosbury, but its own system, I must refer you, well, for 2 reasons really, to Forgotten Weapons. They have a great video on the Unica 6 pistol version with shooting, I think, and it shows you how it actually works. They've already done a good job of the technical side of this. There's not much point me revisiting that. And also, unfortunately, this one, for reasons that escape me, quite honestly, this has been cleared, so there is no movement in the upper half of this gun. I can show you where it should move. So down in here under this scope are some rails, essentially. So the upper wraps around the lower frame, and it reciprocates. So it's almost invisible that it's an auto revolver. But what should happen, so you can, in theory, you can fire your first shot on double action, then the whole upper thing recoils to the rear as far as, well, not very far actually, so half an inch-ish on these rails, and that pre-cocks the hammer for you. Back to that position, meaning that all of your subsequent shots are nice and light. Or you can, of course, pre-cock, as with the other system, and then all 6 of your shots will be nice and light. Now, with this one, this being fixed in place, I guess by the dealer, or, well, from the factory, in theory, every single shot on this is, and I will stop dry firing at that point if anyone's getting twitchy. I do want to demonstrate how it works. This will likely never be fired, but I gather the system is a little vulnerable to dry firing, so that will be it on the dry firing. Still a really nice trigger pull, by the way, but it is stuck as double action only, which is a real shame because that technical feature is very cool and interesting in itself. A number of these were imported to the UK. I have seen owners who on the one hand say that this had to be disabled for legal reasons, and others who say the great thing about these is they don't have to be disabled for the UK. So I don't understand what happened there, whether there was some misunderstanding of the law or some err on the side of caution interpretation of it, but it seems like some of them still functioned as auto-revolvers and some didn't. Now, the wording of the law, English and Welsh law and Scots law that follows it, specifically says self-loading. Self-loading is what's affected. This isn't self-loading. It's manually operated. Now, I guess someone could come up with a legal interpretation that says rotating the cylinder on its own, just from like under recoil energy, could fit that. I'm kind of surprised, and as I say, I've seen claims on either side. Anyway, that's why this one doesn't move. But it's still a beautiful piece of Italian craftsmanship. That's a blued finish, a real high quality blued finish. You only see this on I don't know, like the German Korth revolvers and pistols. Beautiful, like mirror black blued finish there. They had a nickel option as well, either a shiny version, I think there was a satin version as well, changed over time. The walnut is really nice. So a lot of modern firearms, for economic reasons, will have cheaper wood. This is a really quite nice high grade of walnut. Cheap piece on the buttstock, obviously the conventional revolver style grip or stock, and this long angled forend here. They're all in that nice walnut. Slightly weird looking buttstock. I've seen people comment that this looks really not strong enough. So I can assure you it is really robust. So the frame of the revolver, in fact, sandwiches a sort of supporting member here, very solid machined steel, and then riveted to that is the admittedly sheet steel formed buttstock. But I think the aesthetics of that are what turn this from, it's just a nice blend of sort of old world craftsmanship and sci-fi nonsense. I really like the look of this thing. We've got a pad on the butt there. These are Magnum revolvers, both in handgun form, pistol form, and in carbine form. So 357, like this one, 44 Magnum, or 454 Casull, I believe, as well. So they only ever came in Magnum calibers. So I guess that's why it has a bit of a butt pad there. Having said that, it isn't rubber. It's a solid plastic, so they're not anticipating too much recoil. 357 Magnum in a relatively lightweight revolver, you fired it. The amount of extra weight and third point of contact with this means it wouldn't really be a problem. So what I haven't told you, I'll show you this on the side. So there's a sort of play on words with the Unica, the 6 Unica name, which Ian explains. But so on the actual gun, it says 6 Unica rather than Unica 6. That's how it's normally documented, as in the other way around to this. And then we have Sportiva Grifone. So sporting, which I think is undeniable in terms of the actual application of this, of target shooting. And Grifone, the Griffon, it's just the name they chose to give this sub-variant. The barrel length is listed at 460 millimeters or 18 inches, which might be true, but I think that's probably measured to the end of the muzzle device. I'll check that, and we'll throw up a box if this is somehow shorter than that. Well, so I should point out that this is not the barrel. The barrel is effectively concealed under the wooden stock. Is, I guess, an interference fit. Engineers or people who know more about this system than me might know. And it comes through the frame, and you can actually see, if we pop out the cylinder there's the barrel poking out on the bottom of the cylinder. That's the other feature of the Mateba. It's known for being a cycling auto revolver, and it's known for having the barrel or the bottom chamber of the cylinder fire. Why does that matter? Well, it kind of doesn't on this, but in the handgun version, I'm flipping between British and American terminology, it's just the way my brain works. On the handgun version, that's really quite helpful for the bore, a low bore axis. So if the traditional revolver, barrel at the top chamber of the cylinder fires, you get more of a twist, more of a torsion, I guess, and therefore more, maybe not more felt recoil, but the recoil energy is directed in a different direction. By having it on the bottom, that helps the recoil forces go straight to the rear and maybe not flip the wrist up, break the wrist up quite so much. Kind of irrelevant for the carbine, but still gives it that Mateba look. We've got a vented rib, which again is not actually part of the barrel on this. It's part of the frame that houses the barrel. The muzzle device is actually ever so slightly offset, but I don't think that's deliberate. I think that's maybe been a little twisted. We'll look at that. But we have a slightly unusual arrangement of ports. We've got 2 oval ones either side of a circular one, and then 3 circular ones behind. That's going to create some interesting muzzle flash. It'd be interesting to shoot this, but as I've said before, as a rule, I prefer not to submit things for firing that we only have one of, because you never quite know. I'm sure this would be absolutely fine, but other people have shot them on the internet, so there's not really any need.
So when it comes to muzzle flip and kick, it's not it's not an oppressively painful gun to shoot. And I think largely that's partly from the mass and partly from the reciprocating action of the upper assembly every time you fire. However, it has more muzzle flip than I necessarily would have expected. And I think that also comes from the reciprocating action of the whole upper assembly.
Now, the thing with revolver carbines, going right back to the Colt model 1855 and much earlier revolver carbines, we have them from the 17th century, is cylinder gap. So where do you put your other hand? It's all very well when it's a pistol and you hold it out at arm's length or whatever. When your other hand is up here, you absolutely do not want to risk putting your little finger, or any of your fingers, near the cylinder gap, because you get a hot, high-pressure jet of gas coming out of this gap as the bullet jumps that small gap from the chamber to the barrel. Now, that's an interesting point on this, because in theory, the bottom chamber setup means you're increasing that risk. But the way this is designed, you've got so much kind of real estate up here to grasp, you should never be bringing your hand all the way, and it would feel unnatural to do so. So I think this one's perfectly safe. On the early muzzle loading revolver carbines and rifles, the other worry was chain fire. You obviously don't have that with this. This is conventional, modern cartridge stuff that we're dealing with here. Conventional extractor, as on most modern revolvers. And to make use of the accuracy potential of this long barrel and relatively powerful pistol cartridge, we do have a scope on here. This is really designed to take a scope. This is an RWS Classic 4x32 magnified optic. Probably not much more to say about that. It's a Weaver rail on here, not a Picatinny rail. Now, the use of that Weaver pattern rail is interesting. This is relatively modern. 1997 to 2005, these are produced. So we might have expected Picatinny, but I guess that's the tail end of when that became really popular. And the Weaver rail was the sporting standard for so many decades that it's not really surprising to see it there. Other markings, well, we do have the Mateba company logo. So it's a big M in a circle. Now, I think when I first heard of this thing, before I even knew that the Grifone existed, I thought Mateba must be some Japanese thing. Very naively. It's not. It's a sort of 2-letter chunk acronym, Mateba, for an Italian company, the pronunciation of which I am not going to attempt, but we will put on the screen. And that started out as the designer, Emilio Grifone, his father's pasta machine company, which is kind of almost stereotypically Italian, but completely true. So they went from making pasta machines to making shooting machines. Which is kind of cool. The only difference on this side is the word patented. I guess referring to the Auto-Revolver system. Although, it'd be worth me checking the patents to make sure, because there could be something else that's patented on this. But logically, it would be that automatic system. And then we have a load of inspection marks on here that we can show you if you're interested. Or we will show you, and you might be interested. And there should be British proof marks on here. Oh, I should mention the iron sights as well. So that rail, although it looks kind of integral, is actually a part of the forend. So it's almost like a Soviet-style side rail built into the forend, because the stock revolver doesn't have this rail platform, of course, the pistol. It has iron sights similar to these, so a simple notch at the rear and a blade at the front. So to create that, they instead, rather than drilling and tapping and attaching a rail to the top of the frame, they have very neatly bridged it over the top of the frame, so it at first glance looks integral, but it's not. It's actually, well, it is integral, but to this wooden forend. I think that's interesting. Now, they have left you the iron sights usable by leaving a channel under the rail. So you can, in fact, drop right down on the stock and peek under the scope. So if any reason you want to shoot with irons to challenge yourself, or maybe your scope is broken for some reason, you can drop down from the... we'll try and show you the crosshairs in the scope just for fun, really. Obviously, you can put any scope you like on this, really. But you can then drop down into the irons as well. There are some technical features on this that are interesting, other than the automatic feature, which sadly this doesn't. This no longer has, or never did have, was built without it, in fact, effectively. Ian covers these in his video, but just to reinforce, we don't have cylinder stops. One of the things that subtly makes this look weird and cool and futuristic, actually, we don't have cylinder stops on the outside of the cylinder. So there are no notches on the cylinder for the cylinder to index and lock into place solidly for firing. That is all done on the back of the cylinder. So there's a stop pin that pops out of the frame into those little divots and locks up the cylinder for firing. Very important, otherwise you're shaving lead off the bullet as it comes out, which is not good for accuracy, and potentially even dangerous if you're causing a build-up of pressure, if it's that out of time. So, yeah, for that sort of technical detail, check out the Forgotten Weapons video on the pistol. But I wanted to make a little companion video, really, to that one, because we happen to have this in the collection, and it's just a really interesting bit of design. Thanks for watching, guys. Please remember to do the usual YouTube stuff of liking and subscribing and all of that. We have a video here on this channel every week. You'll see me over on the EXP channel too. As to what's happening here at the museum in the real world, we have, starting on the 25th of October, we have half-term weekend, Roman Tales. That's the event going on here at Leeds. Please do come and check that out if you're able to do that. Also, last chance to see our Gladiators exhibition with some pretty spectacular objects in there. No guns, I'm afraid, but some very exciting arms and armour and some other items as well. That's closing on the 2nd of November, so you need to move a bit quick if you're going to get in on that one. Otherwise, guys, we'll see you here again next week. We own a pasta machine that we've used precisely once. I think that's pretty typical. Yeah. You've got to use it once, otherwise you've failed.
And it was a Christmas present, so I was like...
It was really good as well. And we went, oh, we'll definitely use this again. Nope, back in the cupboard it goes.